I want to cover this topic a little more of how the body deals with sickness and how it can show us spiritual realities. One of the things, I kind of covered how Yahweh is a consuming fire, and that I kind of equate the fever with that consuming, showing us what, if you relate sickness to as like a sin, what are the white blood cells? They go and attack it. I think it's interesting that they're called white blood cells, because what kind of robes are the saints given? White robes. Why? Because it represents purity. So the white robes go and attack the disease, the cold, the virus. To me, that's interesting. An interesting possibility that has spiritual implications. And what does the body do? You're always creating fluid that's trying to get dust and allergens out of your lungs, and that's why you end up having to swallow all the time, which you do a lot of times, most times without even thinking about it. You swallow without even thinking about it. What do the tears do? They cleanse. Why do you blink your eyes? To keep that water, keep the eyes moist, to help keep allergens away and flushed out of your eyes. I think that's what Torah does to us. That's part of the circumcision of the heart. As our heart becomes more circumcised, it cleanses us spiritually. We get away from certain desires. As we feed the wheat in our heart, the fleshly desires of the terror don't affect us as much as they used to. We get away from things. It's like if you really like sweets and you drink soda all the time and all that kind of thing, you crave that sugar, which isn't good for us anyway, because it turns the body acidic, which leads to potential cancer and many other things, because when the body becomes acidic. And one thing, which is also why diabetics cannot heal as well as their body is acidic. But what happens if you stop drinking the sodas, if you stop eating candy and cookies and cake and all that kind of stuff and ice cream, you'll find that you don't crave it as much. Your craving for it goes down. And there's so much that can happen there. As we live a Torah lifestyle, we get less of the flesh. We end up with the circumcision of the heart, which, the Spirit controls us more and more and more. As we give control to the Holy Spirit instead of our own desires and our own thoughts, we give it, and that makes us health. That's a spiritual health thing. And the fever burns out the sin. If you look at it tries to kill the sin. If you look at like a common cold or any kind of virus like that representing sin, what does it do? The body burns up, gets really high temp to try to burn, to try to kill that. And that relates to sin, I believe. How sin deals with our, and what is the way our lungs cleanse themselves. There's spiritual application to that, I think, because as we live a Torah lifestyle, we seek to love other people, and we seek to eat clean meats and keep the Sabbath and the holy days and all that kind of stuff. Our desires change. And what's important to us changes. For some, they give up their materialistic ways, and that becomes less of a thing anymore. And it kind of becomes a self-cleansing thing, where we can take thoughts captive before it ever gets into us. If we take thoughts captive, we're kind of doing what the lungs do, where they cleanse, or what the eyes do with the tears and blinking of the eyes to keep that stuff away from us in the first place, or the hair on our body help keeping things from getting to the skin in the first place, where they can get in. One of the things why I grow this is it helps catch dust and stuff before it gets into my nose. And maybe that's a attempt to taking thoughts captive, as it catches some of the things that could harm me before it ever gets here. And we cleanse our temple of things. Learn to eat as we learn to eat the proper foods, instead of pork and shellfish and those sorts of things, but eating proper foods, and perhaps even going vegan or vegetarian if you're so led to do so. It helps the body, and it treats the temple as holy. The temple of us as holy. That's what a lot of the Torah is about. Like the clean and unclean foods is about teaching, not mixing the holy and the profane, and teaching us what we should and shouldn't consume. Just like, with what we consume with our eyes, what we consume with our mouth, what we consume, the things we smell, the things we hear. You can read Isaiah 33, and it says, who's able to live with consuming fire, who's able to deal with continual burning, to live with continual burning. But it answers that question later on. In fact, I'll turn there. What is it? The answer to that question: who among us can live with continual burning? Here's the answer: he who walks righteously and speaks with sincerity, he who rejects unjust gain and shakes his hand so that they hold no bribe, he who stops his ears from hearing about bloodshed and shuts his eyes from looking upon evil. See, the eyes are implied there, the ears, the hands, and then later it talks about his bread will be given, kind of into the mouth thing, it's so much that it's a cleansing process. And as we seek to live the lifestyle, it makes it harder for those diseases that I would parallel with sin change. It's like one of the things I can see from my own life. When I started to embrace Torah, I was healed of a brain tumor. My parathyroid was healed to where it started regulating the calcium like it's supposed to. Those are blessings that Yahweh gave me, and He changed it. He changed the things in my body by His power. I think because I opened my eyes to those things, and that's what happens with us. Is that as we become more into Torah, we keep the predators out, we keep the sickness out, so to speak, because our minds are not attuned to that anymore. One of the things I struggled with went away a lot when I started wearing tzitzit, because it's an accountability. There's a power to that. There's a different thing, like when I wear a tunic or my talit. There's something about it that gives me strength, not the physical thing, but the obedience. Gives me strength to do things, I believe. And it strengthens my body to where I don't, that it changes. If you've got a healthy immune system, you're less likely to get sick. Like people that are born in the spring tend to get sick less, just because their body learns to deal with the allergens and pollen and all that stuff in a different way than people born other parts of the year. So it just, how we become, obedience to Torah kind of is like a boost to our immune system, spiritual immune system. And that's what it does, is that it changes us. That's why head covering, modesty, tzitzit, beards, things like that are useful tools. They're not an end all, they're not a magic cure, they're not a lot of things, but they help. They're tools to help mold us into what Yahweh would have us to be. So hopefully this helps in some way to kind of inspire you to search this out. Search this out for yourself. Look at so many things in nature, because why do things exist the way they do? Because God said so. God said this is the rule. The law of gravity, the law of this and that, thermodynamics, and all sorts of things. Why do those exist? Because God said so. And we live in, He created the rules for everything to run. He gave us the Torah to help keep us healthy, so to speak. So, shalom, shalom. Hopefully this is helpful.